You say you don't understand why in the beginning everything feels intense, deep, almost destined, and then it becomes manipulation, blame, emotional exhaustion. You swear you only want a healthy relationship, but there's one question you avoid, and it's uncomfortable. What if you're not just attracting toxic people, but what if, on some silent level, you need them to be that way? Stay with me, because this video isn't here to comfort you, it's here to confront you. In the previous video, we talked about the shadow contract, that invisible agreement you sign without realizing it. A contract of the unconscious where you promise to be whatever the other person needs in exchange for not being abandoned. Today we go deeper, because you don't connect with emotionally unavailable people by accident. You connect with them because they activate something you don't want to lose, the feeling of being needed, and that feeling is your drug. Have you ever noticed how it all starts? You meet someone who's wounded, confused, unstable, needy, intense, and you feel purpose. It's not just attraction, it's mission. You feel like finally someone needs you, and for a moment, you stop feeling that strange emptiness you carry alone. Because when someone depends on you, you stop depending on yourself, and that feels relieving. But what you call love is often emotional dependence disguised as virtue. You don't just want to love, you want to be indispensable, and that changes everything. Let's be honest. When someone healthy appears, stable, resolved, emotionally responsible, something in you feels strange. There's no drama, no urgency, no cinematic intensity. And most importantly, this person doesn't need to be saved. And if they don't need to be saved, what is your role? Who are you when you're not solving someone else's chaos? Do you see what's happening? Your identity has been built around utility. Maybe you learned far too early that in order to stay, you needed to serve. Maybe you were the child who soothed your mother, or the one who never caused trouble, or the one who was too mature for your age. Maybe you noticed that love came with emotional responsibility, and you adapted. You became strong, attentive, empathetic, available, but no one noticed the price. You didn't learn how to be loved for who you are. You learned how to be kept for what you offer. And now, as an adult, you keep signing invisible contracts. And the most dangerous part, you don't notice when you sign them. You feel chemistry, you feel intensity, you feel connection. But what you call connection is often just pattern activation. It's not destiny, it's unconscious recognition. Your nervous system recognizes the dynamic before your consciousness does, and you call it something special. You meet someone emotionally unstable, and your whole system lights up. I can help, I can understand, I can endure. It's not just compassion, it's fear. Fear of being irrelevant, fear of being replaceable, fear that if you're not needed, you will be discarded. And this is the core of emotional dependence. It's not about them, it's about the panic of not being essential. Here enters something almost no one admits. There is a hidden addiction to being the savior. And it's not just an addiction, it's a heroic identity. There's a silent feeling of superiority when you are the most stable one in the relationship. You are the balanced one, the one who understands, the one who endures. You become the only one capable of handling that person, and that gives you something dangerous, a sense of specialness. If they get better, anyone could take your place, but as long as they're broken, you are irreplaceable. Do you see the paradox? You say you want someone whole, but your complex prefers someone who depends, because dependence guarantees exclusivity. Yes, because when you save someone, you feel above their chaos, and that's addictive. You feel stable, mature, indispensable. You gain a guaranteed place. They depend on you, and as long as they depend, they won't leave. At least that's what you believe. But notice the cruel paradox. You choose people who need to be saved, and then you suffer because they are emotionally unstable. You choose people who don't know how to love maturely, and then complain you don't receive maturity. But what you don't notice is that if they were mature, they wouldn't need you in the way you need to be needed. Do you see the trap? You're not just attracting toxicity, you're ensuring that the bond depends on your function. And when the relationship begins to balance, you feel anxious. Because if the other person becomes stronger, you lose your role. And if you lose your role, who are you? This is the shadow no one wants to look at. The shadow of being good, the shadow of being strong, the shadow of enduring everything. You identify as loyal, present, resilient, but inside you exists a silent complex. If I'm not useful, I'm not worthy. In psychological terms, this is a utility complex, an emotional structure activated whenever you meet someone who needs you. And before you twist this into blame, this doesn't negate the fact that the other person can actually be dysfunctional. It just means there is unconscious compatibility with that dynamic, not because you're naive. Breathe. I know this sentence hurts. Now observe what happens in your body as you hear it. Because being loved demands one very terrifying thing: vulnerability without function. Love where you're not rescuing anyone. Love where you're not the therapist, not the constant safe harbor, not the emotional regulator of the other. Love where you are simply you, and that is almost unbearable. You don't need to be needed to be loved. But as long as you believe you do, you will continue choosing those who need you, not those who choose you, because you never learned that this is enough. Let's go deeper. There's a psychic dynamic here that is fundamental. When you meet someone chaotic, you project onto them something you don't accept in yourself. Fragility, dependency, disorganization. You reject these parts in you, so you choose someone who personifies them. And then you try to control those characteristics in the other. You organize, you orient, you sustain, but in reality you're trying to organize your own repressed fragility. The problem? You never integrate that part. You just fight it externally. And that's why the pattern repeats. Because the psyche always seeks balance. As long as you don't accept that you are also fragile, you will keep choosing those who express fragility for you, and you will keep trying to save them, infinitely. Now I'm going to touch on the hardest part. You say you're afraid of abandonment, but observe this. The one who abandons most in this story is you. You abandon your own needs. You abandon your limits. You abandon your exhaustion. You abandon your anger. You tolerate behaviors you wouldn't tolerate if you weren't afraid of losing your place. You negotiate your truth, and you do it in the name of love. But this isn't love. It's unconscious bargaining. I stay. I fix it. I support it. But you won't abandon me. Yet the abandonment you fear didn't begin in your adult relationships. It began when you realized you had to adapt in order to stay. And since then, you've been doing the same thing. You shape yourself, you adjust, you endure, and you call it maturity. But maturity isn't enduring everything. Maturity is enduring the risk of not being needed and still staying whole. There comes a moment in every toxic relationship that reveals the truth. When you begin to get exhausted, when you realize you're giving more than you receive, when you start to feel resentment. But instead of leaving, you try to give still more. Because leaving would mean admitting something unbearable. I chose this. It's more comfortable to believe you were the victim of bad luck, of destiny, of the other person's pattern, of their trauma. But confronting it means recognizing there's something in me that needs this role. And as long as I need to be needed to feel valuable, I will continue attracting those who need saving. This doesn't mean you are guilty. It means you are unconscious. And unconsciousness exacts a price. The price is emotional exhaustion, asymmetrical relationships, chronic self-abandonment, and ironically, the very abandonment you fear the most. Because when you finally can't take it anymore, you explode, or disengage, or disappear, and you confirm your internal narrative. See? In the end, people always leave, but you never notice that you left yourself long before. I know this hurts, because you built your identity around the idea of being someone good, someone strong, someone who doesn't give up. But maybe what you call strength is fear. Fear of being ordinary. Fear that if you're not the one who saves, you're just another face in the crowd. Being ordinary feels like abandonment, because you learned that love came with emotional performance. But healthy love doesn't demand performance. It demands presence. And presence is far more vulnerable than heroism. Fear of being insufficient. Fear that if you're not resolving someone's chaos, you will have to face your own. And that is the real confrontation. You're not attracting toxic people by chance. You're repeating a pattern that keeps your identity intact. As long as the other needs you, you exist. When the other stabilizes, you fall into crisis. And then you find another chaos, another mission, another invisible contract. Now breathe, because the goal is not to blame you. It's to wake you up. There is a deep difference between loving and needing to be needed. Loving is sharing strength. Needing to be needed is sustaining imbalance. Loving is allowing the other to grow. Needing to be needed is fearing their growth. And until you separate these two, You will continue confusing intensity with connection, drama with depth, chaos with destiny. What happens if you stop rescuing? What happens if you say no? What happens if you allow someone to face their own consequences? Guilt arises. Anxiety arises. The fear of being seen as selfish arises. But notice that guilt doesn't come from morality. It comes from the contract. You promised silently to be the support. When you break the contract, your identity trembles. And that's growth. But growth at this stage hurts. Because you are dismantling an old image, the image of the indispensable. Perhaps you are realizing something now. Perhaps some memories are rising. Perhaps you are recognizing patterns that once seemed coincidence. This is the beginning of the confrontation. It's not comfortable. It's not motivational. But it's real. And real is the only path that leads to individuation. Not the idealized version of you, but the whole version. One that doesn't need to be necessary to exist. One that can love without sacrificing itself. One that can care without annihilating itself. One that can stay without losing itself. I want you to reflect on something specific. If tomorrow you met someone emotionally healthy, independent, balanced, someone who didn't need you to be their constant safe harbor, would you be able to stay, or would you feel useless? That answer reveals more than any diagnosis, because deep down what you fear isn't toxicity, it's irrelevance. And as long as irrelevance is synonymous with abandonment in your mind, you will continue choosing relationships where your role guarantees permanence, even if that costs your peace. Confrontation isn't about running away from your relationships. It's about leaving the fantasy that you are merely a victim of them. It's about acknowledging your unconscious participation. It's about admitting that there is pleasure in being needed. It's about accepting that part of you prefers being the savior to being equal. And most importantly, it's about beginning to build an identity that doesn't depend on another's need. This takes time. It takes brutal honesty. It takes frustration, but it is the only path that breaks the cycle. Today, I won't give you a quick fix. I won't tell you to just love yourself. I won't suggest positive affirmations, because that doesn't touch the core. The core is deeper. It's the child who learned that love came with responsibility. It's the teenager who became emotional support for the parents. It's the adult who confuses intensity with meaning. And that doesn't dissolve with pretty phrases. It dissolves with repeated awareness, with honest observation, with small pattern ruptures. Perhaps the first step isn't choosing someone different. Perhaps it's tolerating the sensation of just not being needed, tolerating the silence, tolerating autonomy, tolerating your own insecurity. Because when you stop running to save, you begin to find the part of you that always needed to be seen. Not the strong part, but the vulnerable part. And ironically, it's that part you always tried to save in others. This video isn't an attack. It's a mirror. If it hurt, it is because it touched. If it disturbed, it is because it encountered something alive inside you. And that's good, because the worst state isn't discomfort. It's unconscious repetition. If you've made it this far, you are already doing something different. You are looking inward instead of only outward, and that changes everything. In the next step of this journey, we will deepen this structure. We will understand how to build identity without depending on function, how to integrate the Savior's shadow, how to create bonds where you don't have to disappear to remain. But before any integration comes confrontation. Individuation isn't stopping love. It's stopping using love as a permanent strategy. It's integrating your own fragility. It's enduring the sensation of not being indispensable. It's accepting that you can be loved without function. And that, for someone who has lived by being useful, is an inner earthquake, but it's the beginning of freedom. Today, you faced something you may have avoided for years. If this content resonated, if you saw yourself in any part of it, if you recognized patterns that have never been named, stay. Because this channel isn't about fast motivation. It's about slow consciousness. It's about real individuation. Here we do not romanticize pain. We understand it, and we transform it into maturity. If you want to continue this journey, not to become perfect, but to become whole, stay. Because what you call romantic bad luck may be the beginning of your lucidity. And lucidity, even if painful at first, is the first step toward loving without needing to be needed. See you in the next video.